Nice that you're all still here. So everybody's about to leave on plane, but today we are trying to do a bit of a atypical, let's say, panel, because obviously this is not a random China 101, and also we wanted to spice up the panel a little bit with some slides. So each of these panelists did brought up a very interesting slide deck, because I assume that if we talk about China, we probably talk about a different image of China, which makes sense to give us some kind of a bigger overview before we start into discussion. And so if everything technically works out, I hope that Moonie is about to present some interesting slides for you.
Hello, Berlin. I'm Moonie, so founder and CEO of eTOC Group. In the past 15 years, I've built bridges between China and the West, working with brands, platforms, digital ecosystems on both sides. What I'm sharing with you today is not theory, it's what is already happening in China's digital reality. And that reality is moving faster than most of us realize. Before strategy, let's talk scale. China has over 1 billion internet users, more than 800 million online shoppers, 89% mobile payment penetration, and hundreds of billions live stream commerce GMV. But the real story isn't about size, it's about integration. China didn't just digitalize retail, it digitalized behavior. We often compare Amazon versus Tmall, Instagram versus Xiaohongshu or Rednote, Douyin versus TikTok. But those comparisons miss the point. China didn't build those platforms to optimize advertising. The platforms were built to optimize conversions inside or transactions inside the content ecosystem. So Alibaba integrates marketplace, payments, logistics, cloud marketing. Tencent integrates social, payment, CRM, mini programs. And ByteDance closes the purchase loop directly inside the content feed. So in China, a platform is an infrastructure. In the West, it's still mostly a channel. And that difference is structural. So in the West, the customer journey is fragmented. Search, website, checkout, payment app, tracking app. In China, everything happens inside one ecosystem. Take WeChat. You guys all know WeChat. Chat, shop, pay, customer service, loyalty, community. So the super app isn't just a feature, it's a mindset. The brands, they don't build funnels, they build ecosystems. European e-commerce is still largely search-driven. China is discovery-driven. Consumers scroll, watch, interact. Content is the storefront. On platforms like Xiaohongshu, Rednote, or Douyin, content doesn't just support commerce. Content is commerce. If your product cannot live inside a feed, it struggles to exist. And here's the biggest shift. In China, shopping is entertainment. Live streams run for hours. Viewers interact, comment, vote, play games. Trust is built live, and conversion happens during engagement. E-commerce has become a culture, and culture scales faster than paid ads. By the way, I also wrote a book about the shoptainment. Later on, Paul will talk about it. So in Europe, AR, VR, immersive tech are still future potential. In China, they are revenue tools. 3D ads, AR, virtual try-on, digital host, AR digital host. So in many Western companies, these frontier tech still sits in innovation lab. And in China, they sit in the revenue tool. And the difference is not the technology, it's the commercialization speed. The Chinese consumer is permanently connected. Customer service at 10:30 p.m. expected. 24/7 delivery under 30 minutes, normal. Instant refunds, standard. Speed is the currency. If you respond tomorrow, you are irrelevant today. That raises, of course, the operational bar across, marketing, service, and CRM. So what does this mean for European companies? The next competition is not traffic, it's transformation. So stop searching, start discovering, stop selling, start entertaining, and stop building silos, start building ecosystems, and stop treating customers as transactions, start designing experiences. China is not the future. It's the parallel digital world already operating at scale. So the real question is not whether to copy China, it's how fast can we adapt that mindset. Thank you. Let's continue the conversation.
Thank you so much, Moonie. And up next, we will have some interesting slides from Nate. And just to bridge over the time, Moonie, what would you say, what surprises European clients most about these ecosystems in scale?
I don't think that they're not just surprised by one bit of this, right? So they're surprised by how it's a totally different philosophy, how life and business are integrated. So the way of thinking, the mindset are totally different. I think that's the part, because everything that I tell today for a lot of people are quite overwhelming because they are totally different. The way of thinking are totally different.
Yeah.
So it's not just one bit, it's just the whole philosophy.
That's interesting. And by the way, as you will see with the panelists here, we do have different perspectives covering that topic. So up next, we will see some slides from Nate, who does cover the view from a brand. How does it really feel to come into the market from a brand perspective? And if everything works out technically, Nate, your slides are almost there on the stage.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nate Bigger. I'm now, as of a few weeks ago, Chief Commercial Officer at Cerascreen, which is Europe's most trusted at-home diagnostics platform. But I'm actually coming with a slightly different hat on. I've just, as I said, recently moved back to Germany, where I'm originally from. But over the last 15 years, I've been mainly in the UK. And over the last 8 years, I have started my own brand in the UK in the luxury haircare space, and last year finally exited my brand and moved back to Hamburg. So I gotta warn you, I don't have a design team at home like Moonie does. So there's some really ugly PowerPoint slides, but hopefully they do the trick. And I'm trying to give you a little bit of a perspective on how a startup founder tries to enter the market and just discuss a few different items, and I hope it inspires some conversations for later. What am I best known for? I scale and I build brands globally, Europe, Middle East, Africa, China, and especially in the luxury field. Last year, I was lucky to be recognized in the UK as one of the 50 most powerful people in shaping British luxury, despite being German. So that's quite an achievement I was happy about. And just to get straight into it, this is how my brand looks at SKP in Beijing, for example. It's one of the top luxury malls in China. We were last year, before I exited the business, we're the second fastest growing personal care brand at SKP in China. So we're an offline retail, believe it or not. And then also on the right, I brought a little video of how our brand has been being sold on Xiaohongshu, which is one of the best discovery channels, I would say, for young luxury brands.
我的发型师刚刚跟我用了一晚上，他跟我说这个护发精油真的太好用了，用完之后头发很亮，而且不粘。我今天大概用了。
Anyways, I don't want to. We don't have to watch the whole video, but I think you see in the top right corner, you see a little number, 162.6. The next character is 1. It's 10,000. So it's 1.6 million people who viewed this video and shopped my brand in China. So obviously a very proud moment for somebody that has just recently built a brand and launched it overseas. Okay, how did I get there? So firstly, I've studied Chinese in Hamburg, sinology, quite academic in a way in Hamburg and in Shanghai at Fudan University. That is me doing the graduation speech in 2008 at Fudan University for the foreign students. And I tried to upscale the resolution on the image with AI, but I put a totally different face on me. So I just said, let's keep it authentic. Then I was very lucky to be in some big companies, including the owner and CEO at the time of a company called Pentland Brands out of London. They're a brand house for sports fashion and outdoor brand. And just to tell you a quick story, in 1981, they bought the majority of Reebok USA for $70,000. In 1991, they sold it for $730 million. They own brands like Speedo. They did the shoes for Lacoste all over the world, sourced, designed, and sold them. And I was very lucky to kind of learn directly from the owner and CEO about brand building. One of the big topics here was thinking long-term and not just short-term. I think that helped me to build in China as well. China really punishes shallow brands, I'd say. And this is us visiting the owners of Fila in China, but also visiting Alibaba in 2012. And what you see here is a massive screen with live data. Back then already, I think this is now our standard here, but just to give you a quick look into how people receive real life data for financial transactions in China.
This is where the transactions are bouncing to. So this is someone buying here and a thing going.
You have to take a video. Wow.
Back then, quite impressive. Now we're obviously optimizing our own ecosystems over here as well. And hopefully we'll speed that up a little bit. I was then lucky to work at Zalando and helped build the marketplace with the partner program. And was taking over a key account management team that scaled from 30 to 300 million in sales in 2 years. And then became managing director at the Hut Group, which was my move into beauty and wellness and personal care at the age of 30. And I was looking after 7 different brands globally, also China with them. I had a quick stint with a business school in China. The reason I mentioned CKGSB here is that a lot of the big founders are alumni of that business school. So the founder of Alibaba went to this business school. The founder of Tencent went to this business school. The founder of Chinese Uber went to this business school. So as you all know, network really does matter in China. Why am I telling you all of this? Because despite all my experience in China, it's been incredibly hard to build a brand over there. So please do not underestimate it. I brought a few, as I said, ugly PowerPoint slides, but just to, some of the hurdles I had to cover when launching a brand in China. It starts with naming. You have maybe your own brand name and you have a partner in China and you're happy you can now sell more. But actually they will register another Chinese brand name, potentially in their name. That can happen, so be careful, because they needed to do social media marketing over there and get traffic. So that's something to really watch out for and just be aware of, that they will not drive traffic to your own Western name. They will create a name that works locally to advertise your brand. The customer is a hyper-sophisticated customer, quite the opposite to what you might think. I think in the West, actually, we can sell products through images. That does not work in China. They compare globally, they compare ingredient lists, they compare prices. They don't want to feel like second-class customers. So, if you sell something too expensive in China, they will be upset. If you don't have the same product names, they will be upset. You don't have the same ingredients, they will get upset. So, this is just something to bear in mind. Credibility can be built in many different ways. It can be built through awards in your own countries. We won 60 awards before we even started to touch China for health and beauty. But then, we also were in luxury retail stores like Selfridges, for example. Or a great story to tell, we were at John Bell & Croydon, which is the top luxury pharmacy in London. They have a warrant from Her Majesty the Queen. The Queen used to go there to buy her hair oil, and then they bought our hair oil there. Now it's Her Majesty the King, His Majesty the King, of course. And that kind of story does resonate if told in a sensitive and smart way, also with the Chinese customer. Market entry, you can find out a lot more from Moonie about this, I think. If you have no idea where to start, I would always recommend doing it with a partner so you don't make the same mistakes I did. But you probably all have heard about cross-border e-commerce. It's probably an easy way to start, but there's limitations to that. There's a certain amount of cross-border e-commerce purchases that the customer in China can actually make. If you are a luxury brand like we were, then you can't really build a loyal customer base through cross-border e-commerce. You need to be able to be purchased more than £3,000 a year over there. Otherwise, they just go to a different brand that makes better offers. So all your effort in actually building that trust and loyalty in China will just be disappearing if you don't do it right and register properly. Margins, it's a huge wake-up call. A lot of the offers are value-driven. We're not Chanel, we're not Hermes, so we can't use scarcity as a method to create sales. So you have to play that game of offers and gift with purchases, so just make sure you keep that in mind. Trust is a really interesting one. China, it's changing slightly, but it is a collective society, and peer-to-peer reviews are hugely important, way more than it is here. So, and you usually see those peer-to-peer comments and reviews on platforms, and that's how you build trust over there, and we'll go into more detail later. I have found that experiences always help, so we really created a good partnership with our Chinese distributor. They would send us key opinion leaders to London, and I would then look after the KOLs for 2 days. We would go shopping at Selfridges together, discover our brand. I would give them a hair treatment at one of our clinics or salons, of course. We would go for dinner. They record everything. Then we do an interview, and it's a really authentic way of kind of building a relationship with local KOLs, which inspires them also to maybe charge a bit less when you build with them and they feel looked after. And the content resonates very, very well with the Chinese end consumer. Now, I'll just briefly keep product and registration together as well. Registering a product in China, it feels like doing an IPO for every single product, sometimes even for every single ingredient. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of manpower, a lot of time. I mean, it took us almost 2 years to just register 6 products at the time, I believe. So just bear that in mind. And then also, you could potentially run into issues like you can't call the product the same thing that you call it overseas. The Chinese customer, as I said, won't be happy. You can't have certain ingredients. The Chinese customer won't be happy. So it's really, ideally, you think about launching in China before you start your brand. I know that's not always possible, but realistically, if you have that plan, you should plan that in. So what is a brand? Just briefly, for me, a brand is a promise. And it's also and you will have heard that word a little bit more, a belief system. I think you've got to be really clear what you stand for, what you're trying to evoke in the end customer. I just want to share one example with you. So in the background picture, you see a little comb. This comb is made of jade. Where does jade come from? From China, and yet, customers in China could probably go around the corner and just buy a jade comb for very, very little money. But they decided to buy it from my brand. And I think that's kind of the idea when you started to build that kind of community They want your products, they will stay loyal, but you got to look after them. And I think this was a moment where I felt, oh, okay, we have actually managed to create a little cult community in China where as a startup founder, you're feeling immensely proud about it. So yeah, this was just a little introduction, and I'm going to hand over to Paul again.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you're all similarly excited between the mix of slides and panels, because we think we all have a different, let's say, view on their topics. So thank you, Nate, for sharing these quite compressed insights. One little question, you mentioned that live streaming with 1.6 million views on Singles Day. What was like your initial first shock when you entered that market? Was like you underestimated it, or you thought it was different, or what was it?
Okay, the first shock, I think Moonie already spoke about speed to market. I don't want to elaborate on this because it's clear to everyone they're 10 times faster than we are. Average kind of campaign cycle in China is probably 6 weeks. If you look at our European world, it's 6 months. So speed to market is definitely a shock. And if you're not fast, you're invisible to the customer, and it kind of resonates with what Moonie said. I think the big second point is how the logic of building trust in China is totally different from here. So in Europe, usually you build a website, you tell a brand narrative, then you build a bit of perception, and that's enough to sell a product. But in China, that peer-to-peer trust is important. Actually, a platform can give you a lot of credibility. So your platform ratings, are your stores verified, the density of comments, the amount of purchases. These are all KPIs that influence a purchase decision in China. So, for example, a flagship store in Alibaba gives kind of legitimacy. JD fulfillment by JD gives you logistic legitimacy or logistic trust. On Douyin to have a viral algorithm gives you visibility trust, and all these things really, really matter in building a brand over there, and that's quite different.
So it's like a big puzzle of very fragile building blocks if it's new. Okay.
Absolutely.
Super interesting. And last but not least, we do have Björn on stage, which will do the Finnish move in terms of how we take a look at commerce, not just from a Western perspective, but from a broader angle. So stage is yours, Björn.
Yeah, actually, I'm not going to talk about China. I'm more talking about us here, and because I'm not a China expert. Those are the China experts. I'm more an expert on digital transformation and innovation here in Europe. And I have my imaginary job title is practical visionary. Yeah, I'm always trying to find new interesting trends and then explain this to executives here. And for this, obviously, I always need to find new trends. And I used to go to Silicon Valley for this, or to the US. But a couple of years ago, I realized that there's not much coming out of the US lately. Yeah, AI changed this a little bit, but in general, that's still the case. And then I went to China for the first time, and there I found all the interesting stuff that I was missing from the US. And that's, I think, the reason why it makes sense to go there. Yeah, why China? Because China is actually the only place worldwide that's not influenced by Silicon Valley. Everywhere where you go, people are on WeChat, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, not on WeChat, but on these American platforms. And that's the reason why everything looks more or less the same. Yeah? China, because of for political reasons, has shut those American players out. They also created a completely different ecosystem. And if you are in a completely different ecosystem with totally different consumers, you get totally different ideas. So that's very interesting to look there if you try to find new ideas. That's why we do these rethinking digital workshops. So we talk about this more in detail. And rethinking in the West is very complicated. We actually don't do this. And that's also something that you realized when you look from China to the West. Yeah, think about e-commerce. Yeah, we are all talking about e-commerce here. It never has really changed over 30, 20 years. Yeah, Amazon looks more or less the same 2000, 2010, 2026. Yeah, and all the competitors are more or less doing the same. I think we all know the game. Yeah, and the reason, and that's also something that I realized because of what I saw in China, is when we are confronted with something new, like there is no e-commerce, we have to invent it, then we come up with new ideas. But at a certain point, when everything works, we're kind of finished. Yeah, and then we just are in something that's called the efficiency trap. Yeah, everything works, the system works, we don't change much. Yeah, we're just optimizing the stuff that works, and we don't rethink things. Yeah, and that's the reason why we are stuck here in these systems. And now things are changing. Yeah, I did a little keynote about agentic commerce yesterday, and now all the retailers, maybe some are here, are extremely afraid that they lose all their customers. Yeah, they stay outside, anonymous, and there are only some little agents coming into their store buying stuff, and we don't know who it is and what they are buying, and they only buy the cheapest. Yeah, so what this picture is supposed to communicate is things are changing around us, and that's the reason why we have to rethink things. Yeah? And the question is, what's our solution for this? And there, China actually can show us a couple of solutions. Different modes of e-commerce. Yeah, the e-commerce situation that I just have shown you, it's mostly search-driven e-commerce. Yeah, that's the game that we all know. But in China, there are also other ways to do e-commerce. Discovery-driven, entertainment-driven e-commerce. We'll probably talk about this, and Moonie has written a whole book about it. Social-driven e-commerce. Yeah, it's not like I buy traffic in social channels and then monetize them and doing everything again the same. It's about building relationships, yeah, stuff that Nate actually just mentioned, yeah, that how important relationships is, something that we can actually also use here for social driven. And the last thing is brand driven e-commerce, also something that we will talk about. Yeah, these are all topics that you find in China, and if you learn from those, you can learn stuff for our business here, and that's probably what we have the discussion about. So let's talk about it. By the way, if you want to check out my presentation from yesterday, it's on my website, and we have a little community to talk about these things on WhatsApp. You're happy to join us, but now we can have our conversation.
Yeah, let's go deeper. Yeah, that's super interesting because the name of the panel was whether we should copy stuff or adopt stuff. So what you say totally resonates with me because I totally agree. Like basically Western e-commerce hasn't changed a lot since the 90s. You still have these filters, and then this AI e-commerce comes in with agents, but actually we're still doing the same old thing in terms of agents, but it's all search-driven commerce. What's your angle on that?
Yeah, the chart that I just have shown you, yeah, that's that we can actually do different things. The reason why we are also afraid of these agents is that we don't have real relationships to our customers. And then they have no problem just sending us their agents. And I did one of our Rethinking E-commerce workshops a couple of months ago. One of the other participants asked, do we still need a shop when everybody is only using agents? And I asked him, do you watch still your favorite TV show on Netflix yourself, or you just get a summary from an AI just to save the time? Yeah, and the answer is obvious. You still want to see the whole show. And that's why we have to provide a show in our e-commerce properties. Yeah, because then people come not only to buy, but to get entertained. And then we don't have to be afraid of agents. And that's one of the ways how we can learn from China, how to adapt to these changes that are coming.
Also with engagement and mental involvement. And also we do have a little kind of, we do have 3 books with you, Moonie, so it would be interesting just to learn about that entertainment aspect of it. Really like that. What we also said, we are playing a little round of Mythbusters, in that case about China. So feel free to bust 1 or 2 myths of your choice about China commerce. Let's try to be fast, honest, and really going forward. Who wants to start?
Shall I start? China is only copying is one of these myths that you often hear. Actually, of course it happens, but usually Chinese never copy. They learn. And the difference is they see something that we do, and then they replicate this. It looks exactly like the stuff that we have been doing. But then that's the difference between copying and learning. The next iteration looks totally different, and we are still doing the same. And that usually causes some headaches here, because suddenly we are confronted with the fact that they are not finished with innovation. And that's one of the things that we should learn to learn.
That's a very good way to put it. There's a good quote saying, different is better than better because better is more of the same. I really like that angle. So what would be your favorite myth, Moonie?
China just sell cheap stuff.
Yeah.
So everybody, I mean, 90% of all those brands we source in China because China did produce cheap stuff, but made in China has evolved in the past years quickly. So made in China today no longer stands for cheap stuff. China is actually not cheap anymore, right? So, but still, we see Shein, Temu, we say, okay, I get it. I know. It's just cheap China stuff with faster delivery. But it's absolutely not, because Shein and Temu are just export tools China use to explore Western price sensitivity. In China, we don't use Shein and Temu. They are overseas versions. So the digital ecosystem and also the consumer behavior has shifted many rounds already. So even the Chinese, they don't actually now buy just cheap stuff. They want, before several years ago, you say big brands, they success, luxury, it's having big time in China. But now the mentality says, I want affordable alternative. I want solid quality, but with a fair price. And China has become an innovation engine now. China leads in 89% of key technology researchers in the world. So this image about China is cheap or just produces cheap stuff is actually the biggest myth.
They also have the most AI patents, just in case. And also very interesting is maybe like the image that you put in, Björn, was very resonating with me with the Western shop, with best price wins. So actually they're kind of exploiting a problem we created with building search-driven commerce first place, and then they just do this as a kind of go-to market strategy.
Yeah,
that's interesting. And what would be like your myth?
I'm just going to build on what Moonie said. So basically what you're saying, I'm translating, is we used to sell them cheap stuff. Now they sell us cheap stuff. Yeah? But no, I mean, that's obviously jokingly said, but we are clearly receptive to having access to cheaper products through other platforms. So maybe there's something about our own consumer behavior that we got to look at instead of thinking about what is being offered. But yeah, I just want to build on that and say, again, this customer is so sophisticated, and credibility and attention to detail is a whole different level. They are hyper informed. And I give you one example of it. So when I was managing director at the Hut Group, I was looking after 7 different brands. One of them was also selling in China, and we had a Tmall flagship store. And we bought that brand from Deciem, which is a famous Canadian beauty company. It's the founder of The Ordinary, and he had another brand and some other patents. And we bought that brand from him, and then wanted to sell it in China. And the Chinese customer was informed that this brand was bought and sold to another company. So we had this idea of uploading a contract to our flagship store that shows the transaction that we have officially bought that brand, and that massively increased conversion rates. It would never work. It would never fly here in Europe. I mean, nobody cares where the brand was before, because for us, it's enough to just know the brand, and we trust the brand through the perception. So I think, that shows there's a hyper-informed customer and they really care about the details. So yeah, it's not about cheap quality. It's really about understanding and transparency.
Super interesting. There's a lot of myth being busted and like wrong perceptions being corrected. Interestingly, also maybe interesting for some of the listeners, we saw the super apps like WeChat in your initial slides. Could that model work in Europe? Is this structurally impossible, or is this something we should aim for, especially because also you said on the dependency, this was on with the European ecosystem. Do you think that's possible, or not so sure about it?
Well, to be honest, that's not possible from my point of view for Europe just to, copy the super app. I mean, Elon Musk is trying to push X to a super app, and he's confronting with a lot of, difficulties. But that's kind of his dream, to build a super app, just like WeChat. But I don't think that we are in the stage to build the super app because, in Europe, the digital landscape is already set. So for every niche, there is a leading app, right? So, and they work separately and try to work together somehow, but not seamlessly. So this super app, in order to, to build a super app, you have to fight all those, leaders in their niche. And that's basically also impossible. And also the law, the regulations does not allow that to build this super app in Europe from my point of view. But this mindset of super app is like to, get the customer to stay as long as possible in your ecosystem, right? To build the trust as deep as possible. So this kind of mindset is kind of inspiring, or we can somehow learn from it. So maybe I think Europe or Western digital landscape may not be able to build this super app because, the maturity of the digital landscape already. But maybe we can think about building, let's say, super layers, super integration, So to make all those consumer journey, to use maybe digital identity and to make the checkout, like we have something a little bit closer, like for example, like Klarna, it's a payment app, but you have all those shops that inside, right? It's not their main business, but they're somehow connected to this payment app. So they make the shopping and checkout, all this process, the consumer journey, seamless and frictionless. And this kind of mindset can be built. So that would be what I think possible for Europe or the West.
Yeah, very, very nice, very good take. Which one of you in the audience does come from a brand? Some hands up. Okay, at least some hands. So in this next block, we are covering probably the stuff that should interest you, most of you, like doing business in China. So that's like a topic cluster for Nate and Moonie. We've set the scene now. We have understood what we're talking about in China. Let's get concrete. So if a European brand comes to you and says, we want to sell in China, which is typically how people approach you, what do you tell them? What works today? What doesn't? And also regarding Nate, if you would start a brand in China from today with all your learnings, what would be like your first 3 steps?
I think, let's say the biggest challenges our clients always encounter are several aspects. One is let's say the headquarter bottleneck. So everything needs to be approved at the headquarters in Hamburg, let's say, in Munich, in Berlin, or Paris, whatever. And that takes weeks. And this never works in China.
Because of Chinese speed, as everybody
Yes,
already.
the Chinese speed, in weeks, everything has changed already several times. So everything needs to be approved by the headquarters. This kind of mentality doesn't work. And also the speed of supply chain. A lot of people learn to do live streaming in China, learn to work with KOLs and everything. But the bottleneck is that they cannot handle the supply chain. So they cannot handle the flexibility. When a product goes viral, means that you need to, ship your products immediately from elsewhere, and you're not prepared, and that's often the problem. So when you spot a trend, right? In China, it's like, okay, I spot a trend in the morning, and I test it in the afternoon. I have the data in the evening, and tomorrow I scale it already. That's the China speed. And here you spot a trend, you have some meetings to discuss, and you approve budget, and you do some prototype, right? And you brief agencies, and you launch in 6 to 12 months. The whole world changed already.
So less talking, more walking.
Yes. So the mentality is just different. So maybe to my point is like you cannot just translate the way of working in Europe to China. So it's translating, it's not just language. It's not just, okay, I localize my website. I make everything Chinese so that people can read. I have a Chinese label. Everybody asks, do I need a Chinese label? But it's not the point. The point is that how can you translate and adapt into the local ecosystem, the local way of working, the local mindset to, be relevant for the local consumers. That's the point of translation now. So.
And Nate, what's your angle on it? Knowing what you know now, how would you build your luxury brand or any brand in China today? What would you do differently? What would be like your 1, 2, 3 steps kind of playbook? Do you have any?
Just like that. It's so easy. Look, I made a lot of mistakes, and I think learned from them. I did a few things right, which I would do the same. But I think the biggest mistake is to assume that China is a channel expansion. China is not a channel expansion for more sales. It's a whole different ecosystem, and that's the way it kind of has to be approached. Kind of what Moonie said, if you know the Shopify logic and you have your online monobrand store, or it's not going to work the same way. You really need to look at it differently. And I would definitely start probably platform native with one of the platforms. I like Xiaohongshu because it's a great discovery platform for luxury goods, I'd say. And I would really focus on that and build the trust and credibility and the KPIs up before I would go anywhere else. And then I think, I talked briefly about products and how they should look similar to, or be the same product really that we have in our European countries when we sell them. Because if you don't have 100% similarity, the Chinese customer spots it, a little ingredient different, something written slightly different, and you will keep having to make company statements and assuring the Chinese customer that this is indeed the same product and we're updating the label. Or it's really painful to kind of fix something afterwards. It's much easier to do it right from the beginning.
Okay, so you should at least copy your own product in Europe. That's a good learning.
Yeah, it's not that easy, of course, but because the regulations are so different. But yeah, as close as possible.
Okay, and if we flip the script, Björn, reality check for Europe. We talked about super apps, what's impossible, possible. What would you say in terms of what could we do or build or change in terms of what should we copy and what should we adopt in terms of from a Europe perspective? Like you mentioned, you're looking from a different perspective on that topic.
Yeah, we shouldn't copy. That's the first thing. Never, but learn. In terms of branding, that's a pretty interesting thing we can learn, I think, from China. Here, we have the 3-stage funnel, and we have the upper funnel with nice little branding, video stuff, TV clips, stuff like that. And we have the lower funnel where you have the pressure to just get the merchandise moving. Yeah, it's just about selling. What we are missing is the middle. the stuff where all the stuff is happening that Nate and Moonie just talked about in China, where the relationship building is, where people study ingredients lists and want to get informed about a brand. And that's, I think, a very underdeveloped area for our brands here. And that's how to work with this is something that we can actually learn from China. We have to do it in a different way because Chinese consumers are much more interested in learning more about the brand. So can't copy that, but I think we can use the approach. And that's one of the things I think we could learn. Yeah, focus more on the middle of a funnel to actually build relationships. Also helps with the evil AI agents.
Yeah, totally. And most people don't know that probably the CRM, the R stands for relation. And we had a discussion today saying, ironically, there wasn't like the topic loyalty wasn't broadly covered because nobody's talking about loyalty, but we actually need loyalty to become fully profitable, right? Because we don't have loyal customers. The question is, don't we even try correctly? So are we really, let's say, harvest what we originally seeded in Europe? What's your angle on this?
Yeah, that's one of the problems. We like CRM is often just newsletters, sending out by something with the return address of no reply at reallycoolbrand.com, because the brand doesn't want to hear anything from the consumer. They want to have a purchase. That's it, and that might be for the future the wrong way. Try to find a way to actually build relationships, have conversations with the brand. And another interesting thing is do things together with your consumer is also something that might be interesting, or let consumers do something together on your premise. Like if you go downtown with your friends in a shop and buy something together, that's a use case that we all know. But think about how can we do this online? How can we go with friends shopping online together? It's something that for Taobao, they have a function for this. We never even have thought about it. I've been talking about this for like 5 years to e-commerce companies. Everybody is always liking it. Nobody is doing it. It's actually a pretty easy thing to do. Put in your shop a function where people can go together in your shop while talking to each other. That's another thing that we can actually learn from China.
Which actually builds trust because your like friends really recommend a product,
Exactly.
which is just a random 5-star recommendation from Amazon from some guy you don't know.
Yeah,
interesting. Is there anything else? Feel free to answer, or anybody else. What's the one thing maybe Europe gets fundamentally wrong about the let's say the interception of customers, brands, and commerce? What would be like your like more of different angle on this?
I mean, in Europe, like how it works is that you build content in order to attract traffic to your store, right? So this is how it works. Well, in China, it's not like this. It's the content is your store. You consume content, and you shop. That was the shopping and buying products are just a byproduct out of consuming those content. That's why shopping is not. I already know what I want. I go to Amazon. I search for sneakers, size 37 or whatever. I score. I just kill my time. It's like watch Netflix or whatever. It's part of my hobby. I just scroll the videos, and at the end I have 10 products. I didn't even know that I wanted. The platform obviously know better what I needed before I do. So that's a totally, different kind of. It's a big shift, right? It's transformational. That's why it's as TikTok, is going so quickly in the West in such a short time, and also as TikTok Shop came, it was a big hype. Everybody discuss about it because the way how you do commerce, and actually for the Chinese brands, transaction is not the first priority. Experience, this kind of relationship building. So I don't want to own you one time. I don't want to convince you to buy my product once. I want to convince you as a loyal consumer. I'm your friend, you know, as a brand. I'm your trusted advisor to advise you what you need. Like you said, you know, like CRM here is just email marketing, send, okay, 20% off during Christmas or something. That's about it, right? So there is, you know, you have private traffic, you have WeChat VIP group, where brands also have live streaming hosts producing all those videos live streaming and act as your shopping advisor, as your trusted friend. So this kind of relationship is another level.
Yeah.
And the loyalty is another level.
Yeah, the content is your store is a very
Exactly.
It's very quotable, by the way. And we did see eBay Live outside. TikTok Shop is at least coming to Europe. Would you say like live stream commerce is a channel, or is it something completely different in terms of thinking about it and as well from a business model perspective?
For me, it's it's a transformational new business model. So it's actually, let's say, I mean, people think live streaming, we kind of tried several times here, right? So there are still companies trying doing live streaming, but there's no real success coming out of it. Because I think here people get live streaming fundamentally wrong, actually. So people think that, I also sometimes, in order to make my clients understand what is live stream, so I say, okay, imagine that's a TV shopping, but it's nothing like TV shopping, because the engagement and the feedback, the data, and the reaction afterwards, live stream is totally different. So live streaming, when you watch a live streaming, the people watch it hours, hours. I never watched a movie when it's longer than like 2 hours. I get bored already, But they watch live streaming hours because they interact, they play games, they vote. It's just a show, a party.
Yeah.
So this kind of level, the Western trials never get.
Yeah. No coincidence. You wrote a book about this in detail where you cover all these aspects. So
right.
It will be raffle with read books for those of you being interested.
Well, Paul, just one point.
Yeah, please.
The thing is that in China, the e-commerce shop is like Netflix. Yeah, people get entertained by it. And we can't copy that again, but we can learn from this, thinking about our shop being part of an entertainment experience. And what we also very often get wrong when we talk about these kind of things is that we think our products are actually boring. So we have to have some kind of exciting content around it to lure people in. Yeah. But I think the task is to make the products so interesting that they are the content. And that's also not as alien as it sounds, because the Otto catalog was basically discovery-driven e-commerce. Yeah, the monthly or weekly flyer that you got from MediaMarkt or from Saturn in your local newspaper, that was discovery-driven e-commerce. Yeah, because you got products as content. And that actually worked pretty well, and I think it still would work pretty well if we approach our presentation of products with this goal in mind.
Yeah, you're totally right. And we had this with QVC and all the other players, let's say in a little bit more boomer kind of approach. But today you see all these beauty brands as well as like candy brands that really understood that their product just needs some kind of different presentation, and it works perfectly in this TikTok surrounding, right?
Yeah, and I would like to add to this. I think Europe has all the talent. I don't think it's a cultural challenge. I think it's a structural challenge. So we kind of do that, when we all have looked at an Instagram post, the post was not that exciting, but the comments are, cracking you up. And maybe we can translate that feeling into shopping, and that's, I think there's an emotion that needs to be addressed through our platforms and ecosystems that currently no one is doing really well yet.
Yeah, translate feeling into shopping is a very good summarizing of this. Björn, Nate, I think you both have an interesting perspective on that. I think what you see a lot, especially in automotive, you also work for different industries, Björn, is that, let's say, premium positioning protects you in terms of foreign markets or competitors, right? Do you agree, or would you say we're getting too comfortable?
In the German market, or
European, German, up to
yeah. Well, if you are still premium, is it just perceived premium because you have been for like 50 years? Do you still provide the premium experience? If you check out a Chinese car, maybe you don't find that much difference anymore that you can call premium. So that's probably also something that a lot of probably nobody from automotive in here today, what they more and more experience. Yeah, that premium also means a premium digital experience, and that's something that we are often lacking in our cars.
Yeah.
I think in Europe, like premium mostly means craftsmanship, like heritage. That's a totally different. I mean, premium is now perceived differently because in China, like premium now also means intelligence, technology advancement. It's not about this good old heritage. And also, because people ask me, okay, made in China, does it still work in made in Germany, does it still work in China? Well, to some extent, it still works a bit, but nothing like 10 years ago. So because, Chinese, they produce better quality at cheaper price. So with better technology, right? If you check out those Xiaomi, Huawei cars, right? So this experience is just luxury. That's why now, 1 out of 10 cars sold in Europe last month, Chinese now. You can never imagine that.
For totally
5 years ago, actually.
For totally different price tag as well. So this is cheaper. It's not cheap, but it's way cheaper than the German comparative model.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, I guess it doesn't protect you anymore that much.
Yeah.
Need to evolve.
Yeah, totally agree. Like we have BYD, we have the robotics. Any of you seen like this Chinese New Year's show with the robotics doing all these breakdance moves? Super impressive. Even if you're into robotics, you still how did they pull it off? So we still have this kind of old model to say they're copying stuff, but actually what you already said is it's rather the opposite. That in AI with different models, Björn you had a good post about it. So there's so much different industries where they're really technically ahead of what we are currently building with a different kind of pace. And the question is, how can we keep up, right? Because we're probably too slow to catch up with the kind of drive that they start as a kind of reference speed, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we always, like, it feels like still China is so far away, right? So if you are not doing doing business with China or in China, it feels like so far away. It feels like you are observing China from distance. But actually, there's no distance anymore, right? So it's already in the backyard. All those, like, cars, first best example, humanoid robots, right? Drones. These are already happening. But also, even in fashion, Chinese brands are now winning in Paris, neo-Chinese fashion. So in every different industry, it's coming quickly. So either you want it, you don't want it, you don't want to do business with China, it's coming. It's coming for you. So the question is that I mean, several years ago when we started the business, I always convinced my clients with the big China opportunity. Now I talk about China integration. You need to integrate somehow with China to work with it, to grow, to be able to be part of the table in next 5 years.
Yeah.
It sounds very harsh. I'm Chinese, but that's the reality. I keep talking to people, but a lot of people don't want here. I mean, I've been living in Germany for 20 years. I'm really worried about Germany, to be honest. Well, China has its own problems, for sure. It's not perfect, right? But the speed, how the society, how the technology, how the economy, everything, supply chain, developed is eye-opening. So it's time to wake up, to be honest.
Okay, I would have one closing question, and then since we are running out of time, we could take some questions from the audience. My closing question would be, try to be very short if possible. If we could copy one thing from China, apart from speed, mindset, one piece of infrastructure, UX pattern, something very small, is there one tiny piece where you would say, we should really copy this? Because I'm totally with Björn to say mostly it needs to be adopted. But there's something like in terms of mindset or whatever that can be copied or should be copied?
Yeah, I mean, two things. Loyalty systems. Love to have them here. It's very
Totally
easy
agree.
to become a loyal customer in China. It's done very simply. And the other thing is just we got to stop optimizing campaigns and we got to start creating more ecosystems before someone else will do it for us.
Very good one.
I think to save time, I already
Okay.
set my pitch.
So
like doing social
I saw some hands. I saw one hand
hope
here and
shopping
one
stuff
here.
on online.
Cool. So feel free to take some questions from the audience.
Hi, thank you very much for this amazing panel discussion. I was honestly mind blown by the point of view, especially the one of Moonie. It's super interesting. But in that sense, and also, I think it was Nate who mentioned, and in the beginning, Moonie said it, that China is not the future of Europe. It's an alternative reality. And I resonate with that. I actually always thought that it was the future, but not really. Because you cannot copy and bring it here because it won't work. It just simply won't work. But then at the same time, we are talking about now what can we learn from China and not copy, learn, right? But then you were mentioning that the consumer in China is super sophisticated. And here we are more, like Moonie said, we create content to attract to my shop. And over there, the content is the shop. So we cannot change that mindset from one day to the next. It's not possible because you said it. It's a different ecosystem. So even though we learn from China, how we shift this paradigm?
So to be honest, I mean, we are actually forced to shift the mindset because as you can see, the Gen Zs, the Gen Alpha, right? Their behavior are totally different. They are bored of this search thing. They still do this, but most of their time they spend on TikTok, scrolling videos, Instagram, all of that. So the question is, as brands, do you already understand this? Do you do something, to capture your future audience? You have to. Because their attention span is so short, they don't work like the generations before, search or worked perfectly, everything about optimizing search. So now I always say because Berlin E-commerce Expo and all of those leading European, let's say, marketing, commerce, future retail events, everybody talks about US-centric landscape, digital landscape, because all the tools, right? We optimize Facebook, whatever, Instagram, and now with the shock of TikTok and everything, but still we don't have enough different perspective. What about this Chinese-centric digital landscape? A parallel world, but we didn't hear enough about it. That's why we don't understand that much. When I talk about this, everybody feels overwhelming, and we say, okay, you know what? We have different infrastructure. So it's totally different mindset, so that's irrelevant for us. Well, you see all those Chinese brands coming to Europe, Now it's the third wave, right? Very beginning, sourcing cheap products. Then the shock was Shein, Temu, the platform expansion to the West. Now the third wave, the Chinese brands are coming. Now in certain categories, but there will be more. What do you do? Do you want to compete with them or not? Actually, every European or Western companies, they have at least one Chinese competitor or competitor that build with Chinese resources. So it's in your backyard. You have to, let's say we don't have to be scared, right? I mean, Europe has a lot of talent. It's just, you asked the question about, what do we have to or copy or learn from China? It's, the only thing is that I always say, just do it. Einfach machen. It's like here, it's like you analyze, you plan, everything's perfect, it's great, but it's too slow. In China, it's like, you mentioned the Spring Festival, the show, the big gala, right? It's the humanoid robots, very impressive. You know how they did it? So basically, they have launched physical AI automations. Like, they just launched a robot. It's far from perfect as first version. But they launched it, and then the market breaks. They get tons of feedback. Then they improve, and they launch again. But here, we first plan until the plan is perfect. Then we launch. Then we don't want to change it because we already have a perfect plan. So this is what China calls systemic creativity. We also say China has no creativity, we copy, right? So it's not anymore, it's this kind of recurring learning and improving circle, and don't wait for the perfect moment to launch your product. This kind of mindset.
Yeah, that's a good
Why not
point.
just get inspired by it?
Maybe we should give Neura Robotics some space to dance for the next Neujahrsansprache from the Bundeskanzler. So really appreciate your angle on not being too perfect. We do have one question left in the audience.
Yeah. Thanks for the amazing panel. So I have a quick question on the regulations aspects. For example, if you take recently Shein as facing DSA and DMA Act, are they selling the same products in China as well? Or they are allowed to sell only in Europe? So that is my one question.
Shein is not in China. They're just export tools. So, like, Temu is the overseas version of Pinduoduo, which is the Chinese platform, the third biggest e-commerce platform in China marketplace. So they do this, social commerce model, and they're very famous for the very cheap prices, great deals, and stuff like that. But there's no Shein in China. The digital landscape is totally different. It's made for export.
So are they selling the same products? For example, any retailers, because here I can see in Europe, they're selling so much products, which is non-regulations. But what about in China? So that is...
The platform is not operating in China, so they don't sell the same products, but there are also cheap products there, for sure. But the Chinese consumers, they don't often buy the cheap products anymore. So they upgraded their experiences and their consumer behavior. So that's actually the mainstream right now. Right.
Final question.
Yes. Hi. I want to be very happy for this conversation. Thank you for that. And you meet us in a very Chinese time. So my question now is your take on agentic AI in the e-commerce landscape. And will AI help us to understand China better?
Well, that's a challenging question. I also give some...
I did a whole presentation about it yesterday, so you can watch it.
So, I mean, I had also a lot of interest in understanding AI and all the difference, how the US approach and also the China approach and everything, right? So basically, of course, AI helps us, but the approach in China and the approach in the Western market are totally different. So AI here is about big breakthroughs, about the leading companies who building the very smart large language models, right? But in China, it's the AI already integrated in every physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you cannot get rid of AI anymore. So it's not your choice to say, okay, I use this chat box, I use this large language model. It's already in daily life. It's already in your machines. It's already in your processes. It's already in your documents. And China does this in an extreme. So they think AI is a good thing. AI improves efficiency, and AI, of course, reduces workload and everything. AI just make our life better. And also, of course, China population is shrinking, right? So in several years, we will have way less Chinese than today. So they need also this manpower to do this. So that's why the humanoids, robots, and how they implement this. And you guys probably also already heard about the Xiaomi smart factory, the dark factory where no people, just on the ground, just machines running 24/7. Every 6 seconds, there is a phone produced. Every 76 seconds, there is an EV car body produced. You cannot match with it. So yes, AI of course helps us understand better China, but it depends on the model. Yeah, and how you use AI. That makes the difference, I guess.
Yeah, dark factories as well as dark customer service will be topics that will arrive here very roughly. So thanks for the question. And again, promoting Björn's keynote from yesterday, where he talks about that agentic commerce from a broader perspective, as well as the white space we are really not addressing. So I would say this was a very interesting panel as well as an experiment, because we typically don't combine like keynote speeches and talk. I hope it was interesting for you. I had lots of fun here, and I wish you a very pleasant day and a good ride home.